Hey everyone, I just want to take a few minutes and walk you through the rubric, and I hope that you can watch this and get a sense of what the rubric is asking you to do for your essay next week, and then come to class with any questions you have and we can talk more about it. But here's just kind of a head start on that conversation. So remember, you're writing short answer questions, and you're also writing an essay. The short answers are going to be due next Friday by midnight, and the essay you have until Sunday, September 20th by midnight to turn into Canvas. Mr. McCarty did a great explainer of how the test works, but I want to walk you through the rubric a little bit. So the rubric is linked here on the Unit 1 test prompt sheet, which is on Canvas, and it looks like this. Let me open it in a new tab. It looks like this. So you've got a variety of categories, and you've got a variety of points available. So I just want to give you a quick rundown of the various categories and what they mean, so you know what questions that you might want to ask as we get into more detail on this in class. Okay, let me make it a little bit bigger here for you. All right, so first category is historical context. So you're going to get 15 points. That's 15% of your essay grade is based on your ability to accurately describe a broader historical context that is occurring before or during the topic. So when you look at the prompt, what is it talking about? One of the prompts is asking about the French and Indian War. The other prompt is asking about the colonial regions. And so you want to provide accurate, broader historical context that will help me as the grader to better understand the argument that you're going to make. So some historical context, either of the French and Indian War, what was happening just before, what were the causes of the French and Indian War, what was the French and Indian War, or colonial development, what was happening, where was it happening, why was it happening that way. Some broader context is necessary, and that should be in your first paragraph, right? So ideally you'll have some sort of hook, and then you will move into providing some context. After you have provided the context, you're going to move into the next piece of the rubric, which is your thesis. And your thesis needs to be clear, needs to be direct, and it needs to address all parts of the prompt. It also should be complex. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so your context should move directly into your thesis. If you notice on the context point, relevant and well-developed and appropriately sets up the thesis. So there should be a smooth transition from your historical context into your thesis statement. Your thesis statement should be clear. If there's anything that everybody should agree about when they read your essay, it should be what your thesis is. It should be that clear. Ideally, it should be a single sentence, but it should also provide a line of reasoning that will help me as the reader to know what I should be expecting in terms of your argument. Right? So not just what is your statement, what is your claim, but why do you think that claim is the best? Now, it should be complex, meaning in this case, you're going to be evaluating historians' arguments. So you should be able to recognize the good parts and the bad parts of the argument. Your thesis should fall more on one side than the other, but as you're going to see later, part of your essay grade will depend on your ability to recognize the other side of the issue, right? Recognize and defeat, or recognize and justify, whatever you choose to do, whatever you think is best and most defensible. But your thesis should be clear, should be plausible, and again, as it says there, it should be based on a complex evaluation of the evidence, right? So it shouldn't be simple. It should not be just a simple thesis. All right, once we move past that first paragraph, so really the first 30% of your essay is in that first intro paragraph between the context, the thesis, and your line of reasoning. Then you're going to move into your body paragraphs, and each body paragraph should be doing two things: making an argument that supports your thesis with historical evidence. Right? And those are the two biggest categories. You're going to want to have multiple body paragraphs. There's no requirement as to how many body paragraphs you have to have. It's up to you. Whatever makes sense in terms of your argument. If you have 3 major points, I would usually suggest 3 body paragraphs, right? So just think about the structure of your essay and how the structure of your essay can support your argument. So evidence. You need to use accurate, relevant evidence that is historically relevant, historically accurate, and skillfully integrated into your argument so that it all makes sense, right? It should show me the evidence that you choose should be the best evidence available, and it should show me that you really understand the time period and how to use evidence, historical events, to argue for or against a particular interpretation of history. Okay, so that's the evidence piece. There's no requirement of how many specific pieces of evidence you need to include, but I will tell you the more the better, right? They should be detailed. They should be specific. It should be very, very clear what you are talking about. Don't just generally describe something happened that caused this. No, what happened? What was the actual event? And the way you use that evidence should show me that you understand the evidence and accurately understand what the event was or what happened. All right. Next is argumentation. You should fulfill your promise in the thesis, and you should thoroughly address all parts of your thesis. So you've got an argument that you're presenting. You should follow through, and you should thoroughly address all parts of your thesis. It should be clear and cogent reasoning, meaning good reasoning. No fallacies, no bad reasoning, no disconnected reasoning. You should be explaining how the evidence supports your claim. So you need to make a claim, present the evidence, and then this piece, the argumentation, is how does the evidence prove your claim, right? And that's the argumentation portion of the rubric. You want to make that connection. Don't make me, the reader, make the connection. You need to make it for me. It should be really, really clear that you understand how the particular evidence that you've identified supports the claim that you are defending. All right, this last piece is 10% of your grade. It's fluency and conventions. I'm sorry, let me go back to argumentation because this is a key piece. I mentioned it when I talked about the thesis, but here's where you have to follow up on that, right? You must address and refute a counter argument, right? Explain why the other side is not as accurate or compelling as the side that you have chosen, right? So you have to address if you disagree with that interpretation, you need to explain why somebody might agree with it and refute it and say, but here are the problems and this is why I landed on this side. Okay, so that is part of that rubric as well. You must address and refute the counter argument. All right, then that last piece, fluency and conventions, that's 10 points. And this is, you have time, right? You should be drafting this over the period of a few days. This isn't just a sit down and write. This is not a timed write. You have an opportunity to go back. You should be spell checking. You should be proofreading. You should be rereading. All of those things. And so I would expect to see not a lot of errors in terms of grammar, spelling. Your organization should be good. You should have well thought out sentences and organization, good topic sentences, good use of vocabulary, all of that stuff. Okay, it should feel proofread, edited, polished for the most points there. Okay, so it's 100 points. It's a major essay. You'll write 3 of these over the course of the semester, and they will be worth more than anything else in your grade. So you want these to be good essays. Make sure that the work is all your own. Do not use anybody else's work. I'm going to ask you to draft this on a Google Doc, and I'm going to be able to see the revision history of that Google Doc. You're going to share the Google Doc with me, as well as turn in a copy of your Google Doc to Canvas, which will run it through turnitin.com and show matches. Okay, so I want to see those 2 things. I want to be able to see your revision history. I want to see that you've worked on it over time. I want to see that you're the one that's logged in working on it. And I also want to see that it doesn't have a ton of matches. If you are going to quote or cite a source, you can do that. Just make sure that you do that appropriately, right? In this class, I encourage you to use footnotes because it's something you're probably not super familiar with. So you would go up to, on Google Docs, you would go up to where it says insert, you would insert a footnote, and you would give us a brief citation of the source that you are referencing, whether it's the textbook or some primary source, whatever it is. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in class. Okay, so this is the rubric. It's 100 points. Get to know the rubric. The way to be sure that you're writing a good essay is to use the rubric and review the rubric as you're writing the essay. Go ahead and check things off. Yes, I've done this. Yes, I've done this. Yes, I've done this. All right, so if you have questions about the rubric, bring them to class. We don't have office hours this week, so we don't have a chance to talk about it at office hours, but we will have a chance to talk about it next week, office hours. So hopefully you have a draft going by the end of next week, and Friday, come see me during office hours, and I can review this rubric with you in more detail. All right, thanks for taking an opportunity to watch the video.